All right, today we're tackling a source that presents a really damning indictment of BlackRock. And the core argument is this: it's not just the world's largest investment firm, not even close. The source material frames it as something more like a private global economic enforcement agency, and maybe even the operating system for what some call the Great Reset. So, let's get into it.
And really, this whole thing, this entire indictment, it all boils down to this one central question. This is what sets the stage for a narrative that, if you follow its logic, could totally reframe how you think about corporate power, the markets, and, well, the entire global economy. Okay, first things first. To even begin to wrap our heads around what this source is claiming, we have to talk about scale. Just pure, massive scale. Because we're not just talking about a big company here. The argument is, we're dealing with a private empire.
And here's the number at the heart of it all: $10 trillion. That's the amount of assets BlackRock directly manages. Now, to put that into perspective, because that number is just kind of hard to grasp, right? The source points out that if BlackRock were a country, it would have the third largest economy on the entire planet. Only the US and China would be bigger. Think about that.
So this gets to a really core argument from the source, what it calls the illusion of choice. The claim is that our free market is basically a simulation. I mean, you look at Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson, you think competitors, right? Or Disney and Fox. But the source alleges that if you look at who the top shareholders are, their boardrooms are essentially controlled by the same tiny group of asset managers. And sitting right at the top of that pyramid, BlackRock.
So the natural question is, how on earth does one company manage an empire this big? Well, according to the source material, the control system has moved way beyond just human traders on Wall Street. The claim is it's now run by a super advanced AI.
And it has a name: Aladdin. This, according to the source, is BlackRock's proprietary AI, basically the algorithmic brain of the market. It's described as being more than just a piece of software. It's the central nervous system that connects the entire global financial world.
And this number shows you just how far Aladdin's reach goes: $20 trillion. And get this, that's not just BlackRock's own money. The source claims Aladdin is so powerful, so effective, that it's actually licensed out to competitors, to huge pension funds, even to the US Federal Reserve. It's directing a pot of money that's double the size of what BlackRock itself even manages.
This quote from the source really gets to the heart of the indictment against this AI. It's described as an alien intelligence. Think about that. A machine making split-second decisions that impact billions of people, but it's all based on pure, cold, mathematical logic. There's no room for human empathy, no ethical considerations, just optimization.
Okay, so if Aladdin is the technological brain, the how, what's the ideological weapon? What's the why? The source argues that BlackRock has a powerful enforcement tool that it uses to make the whole corporate world fall in line with its agenda.
And the source draws a pretty direct line here. It points out that Larry Fink, BlackRock's CEO, is also a member of the board of trustees for the World Economic Forum. And according to this source, the WEF is basically the central planning committee for this whole Great Reset idea.
And here's the alleged weapon: ESG. You've probably heard of it: environmental, social, and governance scoring. Now, the public story is that it's all about ethical investing, saving the planet. But the source we're looking at claims it's a total Trojan horse, a way to force ideological compliance from the very top, acting like a social credit system, but for corporations.
And the source points to this direct quote from Larry Fink himself, from his letters to other CEOs, as the smoking gun: "We must force behaviors." The argument here is that this isn't some gentle suggestion. This is about using that massive shareholder power to coerce companies into doing what they want. You either comply, or you risk watching your company's value get absolutely tanked.
Okay, so this is all kind of abstract, right? High finance, AI, ESG scores. But how does it actually affect the average person on the street? Well, the source claims it hits you right where it hurts by directly targeting the biggest cornerstone of middle-class wealth, which is owning your own home.
And this all circles back to that now infamous line from a World Economic Forum video from a few years back: "You will own nothing, and you will be happy." The source presents this not as some wild guess about the future, but as a straight-up declaration of intent. The goal, it claims, is to get rid of private property for regular people.
And here's how they're allegedly doing it. The source breaks down the mechanism. Step 1, target neighborhoods with single-family homes. Step 2, huge firms swoop in and buy up these homes with all-cash offers, often way over the asking price, so regular families just can't compete. This, of course, artificially blows up the market, pricing everyone else out.
And then, step 4, they turn those homes into permanent rental properties.
The alleged result of all this? Well, the source uses some pretty strong language. It's described as a deliberate strategy to basically dismantle the main way people build wealth to pass on to their kids. The end game is to create a permanent class of renters, a nation of dependents.
And this is where the indictment builds to its final and maybe its most shocking claim, that this immense corporate power has now completely fused with the power of the government.
So the source lays out a timeline, and it all centers around the market crash in March 2020. You remember when everything just plummeted. The U.S. Federal Reserve stepped in and announced this massive, unprecedented corporate bailout. But here's the twist. The Fed didn't actually manage it themselves. They hired a private company to run the whole show. And you can probably guess which firm that was. Yep, BlackRock.
And this is the final charge in the indictment. The claim is that a private company, BlackRock, was hired by the central bank to use basically unlimited, printed taxpayer money to buy up the bad debt of major corporations that BlackRock was already a top shareholder in. The source frames this as the ultimate merger of corporate and state power. There's no line between them anymore.
So the source material leaves us with this final, really provocative question. When a private empire gets hired to manage the government's own bailout, who's really in charge? It forces you to rethink those old lines we used to draw between corporations and the state, and to really ask yourself, where does the power actually lie in our world today?